Hey! So a couple weeks ago I finished my paper edit of Thick as Blood, and that just meant printing it out, putting it in a binder, and just going through it with a pen. I didn't format it any particular way. I just used Perpetua 12-point font, 1.15 spacing. It came out to be about 167 pages. I can't remember the word count. But yeah, this is my first time like printing out something this large and something so near completion, and I had no idea how it would go. So now that it's over and done with, I thought I would just share some of my thoughts on the whole thing and whether or not it really worked for me. So the first pro, and I guess the most obvious, is the ease of accessibility. I could literally take this thing anywhere. It was also nice having my sort of note sheet to be able to refer back to as I was going through. For every draft, I kind of make up a list of things that I want to add, or things that I make sure that I don't forget, things, you know, to help get the points across. I put my weasel words here, phrases that I know I use too much, words I know I use too much, just things to keep in mind as I'm going through, and it was really helpful to have it, you know, side by side, and it was easy to keep this stuff in mind as I was editing it. The second thing I realized as I was going through a physical copy to edit, this could be taken as a pro or a con. For me specifically, it was a pro, just because having to go through page by page meant that I had to slow it down mentally. It's not nearly as easy to jump around a giant stack of paper as it is to type in a character's name in a Word document search bar. I had to take it one page at a time, read it along as a reader would, and that definitely put me in a different sort of headspace. By not being able to look at this thing as a whole or jump around, it really forced me to look more critically at this draft than I think I ever have in any of the previous ones. And I think one of the main reasons why this aspect was a pro for me was because I am very far along in the editing process. This is what, my fourth or fifth draft, and all of my concepts are there, my characters are there, you know, everything has already been laid out. I think if it had been a second or a third draft that I printed out, I would have a lot more work to do, and it would be a lot more annoying and grueling to have to go through it page by page, chapter by chapter, rather than being able to jump around. And the third thing I really liked about going through a paper edit was the fact that it was so much less distracting than doing it on a computer. I got through this thing in about a month, which is the fastest I've ever gone through a draft of this book. Just going through, and I put in a lot. I mean, every single page has something I did to it, something, you know, I crossed out or suggest, or some things I completely rewrote, which I'll get into in a second. But the fact that I was so focused while doing this just made it that much easier. I was able to spot small mistakes more easily and look over things like flow and awkward phrases and stuff like that. So that being said, even though it was relatively easy and quick for me to go through the actual physical manuscript, transferring all of my changes onto a computer proved to be more time-consuming than I thought it would be. It was also easy for me to miss some of the things I had changed just because I used a black pen to mark this up. Hindsight, I definitely would have used a different color. I don't know why I didn't. The pen I used was one of my favorite pens, and I think I was just too happy to like be able to write with it and stuff. But yeah, definitely hindsight, different colored pens would have been nice. Another thing I found challenging was that it was really, really easy for things to get messy. I thought that when I printed this draft, I had it in my head that this was going to be one of the last drafts. Everything was pretty much done. I just had to do some tweaks, you know, go through and just, you know, make sure everything was okie doke. That wasn't the case for some things. It wasn't, no. In some chapters, I really went to town with scenes and changing things around and adding, you know, completely new things. For example, hello chapter 4. And this whole conversation that I just decided to put in, I had to write it on this side of the paper, the back of the previous page. Because I knew it wasn't going to fit over there. And hindsight, I probably should have just skipped the paper and wrote it out or typed it out on the computer, but I wanted to see this thing through. All in all, this type of editing is not for everyone. For me, especially if I had done it to an earlier draft. I think, you know, this was hard enough. I can't imagine, like I said earlier, having to do this for my second or third drafts to go through. Knowing what I know now about how much I actually ended up picking apart for something that I thought was pretty much done. And at least for Thick as Blood, this is going to be the only draft I print out. I am currently working on my next draft on the computer. And I have to say, by the time I got to the point of printing this out, I was feeling a little, I guess, bummed that I hadn't been writing new things. I mean, I was getting ideas and putting them down, and I already started collecting all of my notes for the second book in this series. But I wasn't writing anything new. You know, I'm a person who likes to put all of their energy into one project at a time, and I'm not good enough of a multitasker to work on two things or even read two books. I don't like doing it at the same time. I don't know. That's just how my mind works. Like, I focus a lot better, and I feel like I do a lot better and put more energy into something that it's just one project at a time. However, going at it in a different way than I had done before, I found that this was actually what I needed. Like I've probably said a million times before, I have never gone through with a story so far as I've gone through with this. So this is kind of new territory for me since this is my first book. This is the first thing I'm going to publish. But changing up the pace and the way I did things really, really helped. And by the time I was done with this, I just felt so invigorated and so excited for the draft. Even though I'm still editing, I'm really glad I printed this out and did at least one draft this way. So my experience of editing a hard copy of my manuscript was a good one. You know, I'm glad I did it. It's exactly what I needed. It was just a change of pace that I didn't know I wanted, and I'm glad I did it, and I will definitely be doing it for future books, I think. I think it's a really good step to take. So that's all I got for you guys today. Don't forget to check out my blog for pretty pictures, updates on Thick as Blood, and writing tips, and good luck.